Welcome to the Future in Focus session for Data3's JuiceIT 2021. Early in February this year, we released an e-booklet which you can find on our website called The Future in Focus. And what it did was set out how we might align our technology across our business. And it was less about predicting the future, but more about our observations of what's happening in the marketplace, what our customers are saying and what our vendors were saying. And with me today are some of the contributors of that e-booklet. On my left, Lawrence Boneham, our CEO and MD, Tash McNish, Group Manager of Organisational Development and HR, John Tan, General Manager of Infrastructure Solutions, Nigel Schmelke, Principal Consultant of BA, and Richard Dornhart, our National Security Manager. The booklet covers 5 sections: enterprise technology, customer experience, cyber security, workforce, and there are 2 sections on health and education. To the panel, and I'll open this to the panel, what would you summarise the value of the booklet and what would be the key takeaways? Maybe start with you, John.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think it's really bringing all those elements together. We've seen a massive phase of accelerated transformation, and using technology as the foundation for that has been incredibly important, and allowing our customers to remain productive and also competitive in their markets.
Nigel, someone who looks across a whole business from your role, do you think it covers the main elements that we'd be looking at?
Yeah, so the ebook is it looks at the digital transformation, the blurring of the worlds that you have in the 4th Industrial Revolution, and the ability to better use data, harness the potential of data for your business objectives, and that could be the customer, the client, and actually improve the operations of the business.
Tash, from a workforce point of view?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think it's about getting the balance. I think balance is a key word, which I would use about the balance between technology and people. There's going to be continued change, but there needs to be focus on not doing one without the other. They go hand in hand.
We have a number of security sessions, Richard, in JuiceIT, but this booklet, a good enough summary to start with?
Yeah, I think we talk about digital transformation, we talk about how cyber enables that, but we also talk about how organizations have to have a shift in culture and really make sure that they're focused not just on people, process, and technology.
Lawrence?
I think it's excellent, and it's an excellent summary of where we are today, and really exciting time to be in the IT industry and digital transformation to the fore. The pandemic has actually accelerated that, as we're all well aware. But the summary of the booklet, it's harnessed a lot of the experience that we have within the Data3 group as a whole.
We'll just jump into the first section, which is enterprise technology. And enterprise technology, there's an old formula around aligning business objectives with technology, making sure that we adopt that technology. I assume that formula remains the same, even though there are significant advances in technology today. Nigel, when we start with you, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's still aligning business to technology. They're just so meshed as one. Business users know technology and they know what they can do with it. So we need to make sure that those 2 groups work together as a team and translate the business objectives right through their technology implementations.
John, are you seeing customers bringing in process before technology? Or?
Yeah, I think there's certainly technology is moving, right? It's evolving and it's ever changing. And technology really is table stakes right now. Our customers know technology as well as we do. But it's about elevating that conversation to be coupling the technology with the business outcome, exposing and uncovering those outcomes and bringing them together. I think that's the challenge, and engaging with our customers in different ways to help them through that process is really exciting.
At the highest level, Tash, workforce across an enterprise, what are the challenges you're seeing?
I think it's adoption. I think it's the pace that the technology is coming into the business and making sure that our people are being trained so that the technology can get the best return on investment on the technology that is coming in. I think we're moving so fast, we're doing the basics, but there's so much more we could do with the technology we have available. So we must remember to get the best out of the technology is to train and embed it into our businesses.
In the booklet, we talk also around AI, around enterprise technology. And Nigel, I know that's a topic of yours and yours, Richard.
Yeah, for sure. So AI needs to be like augmented intelligence. It needs to be the one to enable the person to do their task. We have examples around doctors, for instance. How can they better make decisions? How can they better serve the client? They're the ones that are going to be face-to-face with the client. and patient, but they need to have AI in the background helping them with those decisions. So I always see AI as not something that will take people's jobs, it'll just enable them to have more decision making, more judgment calls, and better outcomes for the client or the customer.
Yeah, and from a cyber perspective, I think we were early adopters of AI and machine learning. There's such a vast amount of information that we have to just troll through that it's impossible for humans to do that. So actually, AI has enabled us to make decisions faster. It's really helping us move from a reactive state to a proactive state in cyber.
Tash, you see in the world of OD and HR, are you seeing AI creep into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, like Richie said, I think there's a huge part of administrative task attached to a lot of process. So I think in the OD space, we're looking at chatbots when it comes to workplace health and safety, being able to do a workstation assessment, for example. If we can make it just in time and make it sure that people can access that data hands-on rather than having to wait to talk to a human, we can save time, we can have the data stored, we can review the data, and we can make quicker decisions. So I think there absolutely is a place for AI in OD and HR. It's just finding where it fits in with the process element.
Lawrence, your thoughts on AI in the marketplace in general?
The marketplace in general, it's becoming certainly dominant within the IT market, in fact the business market as a whole. And I think we'd be surprised in terms of the adoption and the adoption rates of AI throughout many different sectors. Of course, customers don't implement projects in terms of being AI projects themselves. They are absolutely linked to business outcomes. And I think the acceleration of digital transformation is playing a major role in that. And what really excites me in the market today is that the business outcomes are intrinsically linked to the digital transformation. In fact, digital transformation is actually the enabler for the majority of business outcomes and business priorities. We've not seen that I have not seen that for many decades in the industry.
You hit the nail on the head, Dee, because if they use AI as that competitive advantage, if they grasp that, they can just totally change the way the businesses operate. For instance, sentiment analysis, I was doing some work on recently. The sentiment analysis that you can get through the social media, through that sort of stuff, the churning through that, you can actually get data about predictive behaviour in the future. You can pick out data that can make decisions that you can get the competitive advantage and launch yourself into different markets. So AI can be that enabler, like you say, churning through that, all that information that's available, but making it meaningful. And then you've got the career side of things. You don't just need a data scientist, you need a data storyteller. You need those people that can tell the story. Okay, what does that data mean for our organisation?
The second part of the book talks about customer experience, and customer experience has been around forever. Every business needs to give their customers a great experience to stay in business, I guess. But why is it the topic of flavour now? Why is it being talked about more than it has been in the past? I guess, John,
Yeah, I think it is because as consumers in our own personal lives, we've changed the way we interact with businesses. It's become very consumer-based in terms of digitisation, and we expect that in the workforce and how we engage from a business perspective as well. So bringing that B2C experience into B2B is a real shift. And our entire industry's gone through, or is going through, this shift of engaging with customers in different ways. And it's no longer just about the speeds and feeds of technology. It's about, how does that provide differentiation? How does it boost revenues for our customers? How does it boost the experience? It requires different skills. It requires different people within our customers' organisations to drive those engagements, and also an appreciation for data. We've talked a bit about that today, that when you bring those pieces together, you can get some real benefits in terms of operational efficiency, but also drive stronger customer experience. So that's where businesses are differentiating, right? It's around creating that best possible experience. And what the pandemic has done is brought that to the fore, that if you can digitise, you can do it quickly, and you can do it effectively, you can be really, really successful.
I think culture would be a part, Tash. in the whole customer
Absolutely.
experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that culture has changed in some degree because of the way that we are working today and hybrid workplaces. I think there needs to be a continued focus on maintaining and developing culture, not only environmental culture but digital culture. And I think that we need to, continue to move forward and not lose sight of what an organisation looks like, an organisational culture is.
And we were talking about that before, Tash, weren't we? That there's in the workplace environment, the digital workplace is not just the virtual world, it's the physical world. How do you have the office layout? How do you look at the behavioural things? So perhaps someone's working from home for the last 3 weeks. How do we get that behavioural thing? How do we check that they're okay? So it's the physical, virtual and behavioural world that makes up the solutions that you put in place.
The booklet made a big deal about simplify, simplify, simplify. Do you think the IT industry confuses its customers sometimes with the language it uses?
I think the IT industry confuses itself sometimes with the language, so I think we're all familiar with all the three-letter acronyms or TLAs. So it's something which we need to pay increasing attention to. And one of the things that's so important in the changing world is that our customers are no longer just the IT departments, they are the lines of business within many large organizations. And those lines of business don't necessarily talk in technology, they want to get the business outcomes. Technology is the enabler, so we need to be very mindful of that as we communicate.
Because absolutely, like the low value tasks, the ones that don't have that customer taking value that you can automate, get rid of all those low value ones and enable the people to do those judgment calls, do the high value, be out there with the customer selling things. That's what needs to be done. I had a client that said, I got 12 different ways I can make a Big Mac. It's the same thing we're doing. Each office does it differently, each state does it differently, but we're actually doing the same thing. So why don't we make it simpler for us, and then we have that client contact instead of doing all the paperwork and everything that was behind it.
I think it's important when we talk about simplification, when we talk about customer experience, that we don't underestimate the value of cyber in that process, because our customers are expecting a secure experience. And I think for many organizations, that can be a competitive advantage, but I also think that customers are now looking for that. They want to know that the interactions that they're having with an organization, they want to know that their data is secure.
In the context of customer experience, what are your thoughts on the face-to-face selling that many organisations still do versus the competitive online buying experience that we also have available to us?
It's changed because the COVID world, you then didn't have the chance to go face-to-face. So a lot of us found that it's far easier to use things like chatbots that Tash was mentioning, able to do things that are procedural at home that you don't want to have to do. You might want to go in, say to a bank, and to get a best rate. You know the bank manager, you know your details, he's got that. But you don't want to be transferring money. You don't want to be doing, uploading forms and stuff and running around the town. You want to do all those procedural things with digital technology so that you can do the face-to-face, the high-value stuff, and that value that matters.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a mixed approach here depending on your customer base. It's around potentially segmentation, using those digital tools to drive the right experience as well as maintaining face-to-face. So we certainly see that in our customer engagements right now, that very much customers want that face-to-face interaction still. Maybe it takes a slightly different style of engagement via virtual, but segmenting customers and getting still an effective engagement all the way through the customer base is a bit of an art form. So it requires a lot of the right approach around data and knowing your customers and what they really want.
It's the value of the interactions. I think that's the important thing with customers. It's no longer the having a cup of coffee and sharing a cup of coffee and not talking about anything in particular. It's really the value and the information and the data that we are able to provide, or customers are able to provide. can be done in many forms, and whether it's face-to-face or via video conferencing, it's the value of the information is the most important, most critical.
And it's a consistency as well. I don't want to fill out all this information and then go into an office and say, oh, what is your date of birth and that sort of thing. All that information's there, so you're starting that conversation with all that background. So you're starting that conversation, what do you need? What's your concerns? You know, that type of thing. That consistency has not been there in the past. You come in to see a provider and they have different information to you, and you spend the first 10 minutes haggling about it. You need that information there so that you can have that proper conversation and find out what they need. Yeah.
Following that on, I'd prefer to see someone coming to me as a customer telling me this is what you need, because I've done the research, because I know your organisation, I know what your pain points are. Here's what I believe that you should be looking at, rather than doing it in a traditional way, which is actually something which is potentially time consuming.
And we can do that today. You know, we can certainly look at propensity-based data based on how our customers are interacting with us and our platforms to really drive that engagement. And I think there's also a shift towards measuring that as well. Building in customer health metrics into your organisation is a great way of understanding, if you do this right, does that have a positive effect on the customer health? And then how do we do more of that? How do we drive the right engagement at the right time?
And that's more about being insights driven rather than data driven, which is a thing of the past. Because like you were saying before, you end up with a data swamp sort of thing. But if you're insights driven and then you can action those insights, that you're in a lot better place rather than going the opposite direction.
And we know that technology is increasing all the time and evolving all the time. You can only assume that the bad guys are doing exactly the same thing. So if you're not improving your technology and transforming your business, you're vulnerable. But do you think, and again I'll open it up to the group, do you think that businesses can technically and economically keep up with the threat actors that are out there that are challenging us to keep our businesses secure? Start with you, Richard, it's your subject.
Look, I would say that trying to maintain the edge from a technology and economic perspective is actually quite difficult, because, as you said, threat actors are, there's just a lot of them, and it's really difficult to maintain the edge. What's important, though, is to have a plan, and I think what you need to be looking at in order to stay on top of things is to have an information security management system, and that's really important. You need to understand the risks in your organization. Once you understand that, you can then start to build a strategy to protect the organization. I like to say things like, understand what your crown jewels are, and then make sure you have the right protection strategy around those, and then move forward from there. I don't think that technology is the answer. I think it's a combination of people, process, and technology that have to be consistently evaluated.
We will get into another session and go through the logic of responding to incidents and how we go about that. But Tash, we talk in the booklet around skill shortages as being a problem. What are you seeing in the marketplace, particularly in the cybersecurity area?
There absolutely isn't enough, and I think the pandemic has had a huge impact on that as well, because our talent pool has shrunk a little bit because we can't access overseas talent, obviously, as much as we could previously. I think that we don't have as many people coming through the STEM or through the universities. IT isn't perhaps as sexy as some of the other things out there. I think gaming's very sexy, but I think that there needs to be more done around IT. So we need to do more education in the space around why you would want to come and work in IT. So I think there's a lot of work to do in that space. But yeah, there is definitely skill shortage, and something that we're going to have to adapt and look at organically growing and developing our people and shifting the skills that they have and transferring their current skills to different areas of technology as we move forward.
The rise of the threat actor. You know, when we start to respond to security around, you need governance, you need technical controls, you need to be able to communicate. But just on governance, and before I go to you, Nigel, governance is all about leadership. So Lawrence, the impact of leadership and the governance that senior management or executives have, do you have a comment to that and how it plays a part in cybersecurity and how we manage it?
Yeah, absolutely, and it changes, and as we discussed earlier, it's not just about technology. I know it's strange for a technology company to be saying that, but we can't stress that highly enough. It is around the people, it is around the process, but I'd also label it in terms of governance. And being a public company, we're only too familiar with governance, and we have a range of compliance obligations as a public company. Cybersecurity is the emerging one that is a standing agenda item on our board, and it will be across many public companies' boards as well. And what we'll see is what I believe we'll see the emergence in the same way as audit and risk sits alone as a reporting line into a board, that cybersecurity will play an equally important role in that. And the governance that organisations put around security involves people, process, and of course technology. But technology is just the one component.
Nigel, would you think governance, and maybe you, Richard, governance is it unfair to say it's probably the least concentrated part of setting up cybersecurity?
It's definitely, it's not as flashy as cybersecurity is, but I think the data governance starts at what you were mentioning around classifications, etc. So there's this misconception, okay, let's keep all our data on premise, because it's secure there. But that's not the case, because your network's exposed through the internet, and you could have practices around that data governance that aren't ideal. You could have admin users in the company that have got they're not role-based, they can do whatever they like, and that can be, through threat actors, it can be exposed. So having that data, all your data on premise, is not necessarily a good thing. When you move to cloud solutions these days, you get much more security in those environments. So the key thing is look at the data classification, look at what's public, what's private, what needs to be private. Attach the right security level to that data. So we don't want to spend all our money on a public data, making that secure when it's already out there on the internet, and we spend the money on what's making a competitive advantage on that privacy side. So the data governance is from when you input the information right through to using it at the end, and ensuring that the quality's there, it's secure, the privacy's attached to it. So that's one of the things that, it's not all just about technology, but cloud can be the enabler to enable the right security controls to be put there. And since I've started Business Aspect, the data and cloud is the big drivers. It's just work coming through for data and cloud is just enormous, and people and companies need help with that, and that's what we can do.
It's potentially made even worse by the emerging technologies coming through towards, edge-based technology, compute, SD-WAN, distributing that data to different locations across your network and across your environment. So being able to manage that one day compared to the next month is a moving target. So in terms of finding that data and how it's being used across different sources in the cloud.
I would just add to that, there are some things that you probably need to do in the beginning, which is understand your data, understand where your data is. What we often find is most organizations have a significant amount of unstructured data sitting in home drives, sitting in the cloud, and if you don't take the time to understand the data that you own and then classify it, you're already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
So I think as organizations start to move to cloud, it's a great opportunity to take the time to review the data at that point before you put it up there.
That wraps up our session today, and the session called Future in Focus. I'd like to thank our panel. We hardly kept a script at all, so you've done a great job. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch it, and we have plenty more sessions to come in Data3's Digital JuiceIT 2021.